Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our evening with Jamie Brenner. She's going to be talking about her amazing new book called Blush. And I was telling her that she touched all the books that I loved when I was a teenager. I called them the reading under your covers with a flashlight books because you weren't really supposed to be reading them, but we were anyways. So, and I'm so excited to have Nicola Harrison here to be in conversation with Jamie. And I want to welcome everybody here. And you guys, it's so nice to have you. And thanks for staying up late with us. And go for it. Welcome to GGP.
Thank you. So excited to be here. And Nicola, thanks so much, because we are friends IRL in real life. So it's especially fun to be able to talk at an event like this with someone that I just adore. So we'll have some fun.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us. I'm Jamie. I'm so excited we get to chat about your 6th novel, Blush, which I was lucky enough to read an early copy of, and I absolutely loved it so much. So it just came out yesterday, and I'm happy to see it come out into the world that is getting back to normal, as opposed to last year when your book Summer Longing came out in the height of the craziness. Yeah. In March, right? Was it March or April?
May.
It
was May. No, it was April. I think it was April. I don't remember. The whole thing was such a blur.
It all blends together.
Yeah.
So I know it's only been 2 days, but how has this launch compared to the last one?
Well, I know how Zoom works now, which is a bonus. I actually understand like the concept of doing this virtually. And it's so strange because last summer it felt like such a sacrifice to do events virtually. And now I feel like it's such a bonus that we have this ability because, I'm talking to you, you're in California, I'm in Philadelphia. And 2 years ago, we wouldn't have thought to do this. Like either I was getting on a plane or it wasn't happening.
Right.
So I really think now, even though things are getting back, we can have the best of both worlds and have both types of events, which actually I think opens things up for the readers, the bookstores, and the authors. So I'm feeling pretty happy about it.
That's so true. And because now we can have you can reach so many more people this way. Yeah. So it's good. I feel like we should share that we were in a Zoom COVID group for the past year. We've been chatting on Thursdays on Zoom with some of our author friends.
Yeah, it was, so everything shut down last spring and there were a bunch of people with books coming out, and we were so used to meeting up in New York City that we just took for granted. And when that network was taken away from us, a group of us, 6 of us, got together every Thursday night to touch base, to keep us motivated creatively, emotionally. And to this day, we're still doing the Thursday night, but it was one of those silver lining things that came out of the whole thing, which was this, like the way we came together and got even closer.
Yeah, I feel like it kept us all a little bit sane.
Yeah.
For those people who haven't read Blush yet, tell us what it's about and what inspired you to write this book.
So Blush is a book I've wanted to write my entire life, for as long as I've wanted to write books. It took me some time to figure out how to put the pieces together. It's very much an homage to the books I read while I was growing up. Scruples by Judith Krantz, Chances by Jackie Collins, Lace by Shirley Conran. Books I was not supposed to be reading, but they left a huge impression on me. So Blush is the story of 3 generations of women who convene at their family winery for the summer. And we have the matriarch who's in her 70s. We have the main character, Leah, who's in her 50s, and Leah's daughter, Sadie, who's a college student. And each of these women is at a turning point in their lives. They're facing disaster, personal, professional, academic, and they find over the course of the summer surprising answers and strength, I guess you could say, through these old novels that are laying around the library of the home because the matriarch, the grandmother, used to have a trashy novel book club.
I love it. I love it. That was such an interesting and unique surprise to like have that book club in there. And so what, why did you decide to bring the novels of the 80s into this book?
Well, these were the books that made me want to be a writer. They were, you know, I was growing up, I was in the 1980s, I lived in suburban Philadelphia, and these were the only messages I was getting that, you know, as a woman, you can go out in the world, you can move to a big city, you can try something adventurous, you can have love affairs, and you can fail at those love affairs, and you can make mistakes, and you can also achieve great things. I remember telling a teacher that I wanted to be a writer when I grew up, and she said to me, well, maybe you can be a teacher. Which was such a contrast to what I was seeing in the fictional world, which was there are no limits. And it seems so evident to us today, like that of course you can go and do what you want to do. But I really didn't see that. I didn't have any real life examples. And there was this quote I read, Ann Tyler said, "We read to live other lives in other places." And I really felt that I was reading to have other mothers, to have sisters, to have other people telling me how I could live life. So for a long time, this was sort of like my little secret. Like if I worked in book publishing in New York, and I would hang out with these very literary people. And when they asked what my favorite books were, you know, I would say The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt, which I loved.
Yeah.
But, you know, deep down, the truth was Mistral's Daughter by Judith Krantz. And then one night I was at a fundraiser for a literary magazine called One Story at Helen Ellis's apartment, the author of The Southern Lady Code. And there were all these very accomplished writers and agents there and editors. And somehow the topic of these books came up. And Helen was like, yeah, I have a trashy novel book club. And we read like all these old books from the 70s and 80s. And a lot of people chimed in. And I realized, okay, like this is a thing. Like people are
a dirty little secret.
It's a dirty little secret. And like these books are as much a part of our lives as like the so-called classics. So that's what I knew, like I had to somehow get this book off the ground.
So I hadn't read any Judith Krantz books or Jackie Collins books, but my mom had. I had seen my mom read a couple. But what my mom and I used to watch when I was growing up in England was Dynasty. So we used to watch that. And so I thought about that when I was reading your book. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that must be what America is like. So then when I moved here, I was like, I'm not going to fit in. I'm not going to fit in.
Did you bring your furs and your shoulder pads?
Yes. Okay,
I
good. Brought them all, and
okay.
I went to high school that first day, and it didn't go down well.
Oh wow, it's so funny. So was Dynasty like? Was it huge in England?
I think so. I mean, we watched it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a little young to be watching it, but I loved watching it with my mom.
Well, I write about Dynasty in the book because, you know, it was also a great age for television drama. And these books were all made into miniseries, which, you know, in the time, I feel like I'm 90 years old, but before streaming, everyone watched the same like movie of the week on a Wednesday night, and then was talking about the same thing the next day. And then you had to wait a week to see like part 2 or however they did it. And it was like this amazing communal thing, this enjoyment of this kind of, you know, soapy drama.
But I didn't feel, when I read the book, I didn't feel that I had to have read those books in order to get it or to understand. Like, because you have the 3 women in a book club, and they're just, Sadie, the daughter, is discovering it for the first time, and Leah. So then I felt like I was learning about these books alongside them. So I like that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Because I wanted to show the different perspectives, and Sadie was my eyes as a new reader and as a modern reader, because reading these books in 2021 is very different than reading them in 1985. And some things, frankly, don't age that well. And when I reread the books prior to starting writing Blush, I cringed a little. There are things in there that would never make it past a line editor, just in
Right.
terms of like what's acceptable to the way to describe someone, or things that are said. But it was a different time, and my young character says things like, oh, well, this sex scene wasn't consensual. And that was not a lens through which anyone discussed,
Right.
A scene back then in books or movies. So I had to have her see it in that way. And then her grandmother and mother had to kind of say to her, look, it was a different time. And you have that, in the context of the day, this was not about consent or not consent. Like it was not trying to make a statement about that.
Right. It was interesting to see the three different women's perspectives on the books. But going back to the winery, so this book takes place in the North Fork of Long Island, and my novel Montauk took place on the South Fork of Long Island. So for those of you who don't know, this is Long Island, and like that's the South Fork and that's the North Fork. So they're just separated by the Long Island Sound. So what drew you to the North Fork? Why there? Why did you place a winery there and not, Napa or somewhere else?
Well, I mean, just for practical reasons, I really do like to spend time in the place that I'm going to set the book. And I just knew, this is a place. I was living in New York City at the time, that I could actually spend days there and really, learn hands-on what it's like to be at a vineyard. But I was in Sag Harbor, which is another waterfront town there, at a restaurant, and I was researching one of my previous books, Drawing Home. And I was in a restaurant, and I realized that the wine list was the same name as the restaurant. And I looked it up on my phone, and sure enough, it was this family-run vineyard on the North Fork. And since I tell stories about families, and I'm fascinated by family businesses and dynasties, that was my first idea, that this would be an amazing setting for a book, and an amazing milieu for a family story. So that was the beginning. Right. And then I realized it was all right out there. Amazingly easy to access, that you could be in New York City and then 2 hours later, like walking through a vineyard.
Right. It's amazing. So beautiful. Yeah. But while I was reading this book, I felt like I wanted to have a glass of rosé in my hand and be nibbling on some cheese the whole time, because the way you described the wine and the different flavors and how it was grown, and then the different cheese, I was like, are you a foodie? Did you go to school for this, or what kind of research did you do?
This was a huge learning curve for me, because I knew very little about wine, and the only cheese I really ate was like Swiss cheese or Jarlsberg. But luckily there was a great resource in the city, a place called Murray's Cheese, and they host cheese classes and wine and cheese classes. So I took a few of those, and it's amazing what you can learn, really, even just in a few hours with the right teacher. And one of my instructors was a North Fork winemaker, an award-winning winemaker named Rich Olson Harbich at Bedell Cellars. And he spoke of his wines the way you and I would speak of a book, with the story it tells and where it comes from, and the patience, and it made me fall even more in love with the idea of using wine as a conduit to telling a family story. So I learned about wine and cheese there, and I was always not wanting to have to like think about rules for what to eat, like what's the right wine for this. Like I'm just like, drink what you want. But they made it really fun, and they showed me that it's not about rules, it's just about amplifying the experience of both the wine and the cheese, and the different ways you can do that. Like one of the philosophies is like goes with like. So if you're drinking a North Fork wine, you might want to eat a cheese that's been produced from a dairy farm nearby, because they have the same terroir, or like of the same place.
Right. I remember that terroir coming up in the book.
Yeah.
I learned a few things. I felt when I was writing Montauk, I felt an obligation or like a duty to portray it accurately. Did you? And then I like was very curious to hear from locals after the book came out, if I had done a good job. Did you feel that way?
Yes. I feel that way with every book. And I felt not that nervous about this because I had some readers early in the wine industry, and like I knew I researched this so much. I really like crossed my T's, dotted my I's on this one.
Yeah.
So I felt okay because I had so many really talented people in the industry talk to me and look it over. But that's always a risk when you're writing something specific in a space where people make their living and that's very visible. But
Yeah.
I also do feel like as a novelist, we have some liberty
Yeah,
to.
exactly. But it's interesting. That's one of the things I love about writing novels is that you do so much research on the topic that you're writing about. I mean, way more than probably what makes it into the book. And we get to become these little mini experts on a specific topic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's fun. Let's see. So, what did I want to ask you next? Sorry, I got distracted by chatting. Okay, so there are a lot of feminist themes and undertones in Blush. What did you want readers to take away from this novel?
I wanted readers to take away the idea that it's never too late to do what you want, even if you feel like you made certain choices in life that took you in maybe the wrong direction. I think it's never too late to course correct. And the books that I read, like the Jackie Collins books, they really gave that message to young women, like, oh, in your 20s, go out there, you can do it. But I still feel like we don't get that message enough as women in midlife. And I find myself sort of fixated on midlife. And I really want to tell that story as much as possible. So my favorite characters are always the older women. And I guess the biggest takeaway is it's never too late to try something new or to go for it.
Yeah. Who would you say you connected with most of the three characters? Vivian, the fabulous older grandmother, and then Leah, the daughter, and then Sadie, well, Leah, the mother, and then Sadie, the daughter.
Well, I guess, I mean, Sadie is so much like my 20-year-old daughter. She was 18 when I wrote this, that I think that's a very real character to me. And it was her refusal to ever read any commercial books whatsoever that gave me the idea. Like, I would think, what would she think if she saw what I had read at her age? And that was like part of the whole origin of this book too. So I guess she's the most real to me. But Leah's my age, and I guess she's like the audience's conduit, and she's my conduit. So I guess I relate the most to her.
Mm-hmm. What about Vivian? She was so fabulous, and she dressed so well. What was your inspiration for her as a character?
Oh my gosh. I always write the older women that I wish I had in my life. And like these grand dames of the 80s left a huge impression on me. I know I had a picture of the soap opera actress Constance Towers from General Hospital on my bulletin board. And I'm fascinated by people like Iris Apfel and Linda Roden, who like seem to be peaking in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So she's and it's funny. And I had people tell me that they were reminded of the grandmother in the Gilmore Girls, which I hadn't watched before.
Okay.
So now I'm watching the Gilmore Girls. But that type of older woman, elegant and opinionated and full of experience, maybe full of regrets sometimes. That's an evergreen fascination for me in terms of character.
Right. So I'm still fascinated about the winery. Did you actually spend time at a winery there? And is this based on a specific one? Can we read the book and then go and visit it?
Yeah, so this is very much based on a place called Bedell Cellars on the North Fork. The way I describe like the room where the barrels are and the tasting room and the veranda in the back, that's all based on Bedell. And I spent many days there out in the field with the vineyard manager and in the tasting room with the wine concierge, and just sitting there and observing the way people act when they go to a winery and what they wear. And luckily, all of this was happening in 2019. So I was able to do all this, but it was very, very hands-on. But luckily there's some really wonderful books for anyone who wants to explore this on their own and doesn't have access to going to a winery. There's a memoir called The Vineyard by a woman named Louisa Hargrave. And she and her husband were the first people to start a winery in the North Fork in 1971. So I got a lot of Vivian's backstory from this memoir.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the backstory was so rich and so good. It all wove it all together. So I have a selfish question. Is you generally write a book a year? How do you do it? What's your process?
Oh, goodness. Well, how do I do it? I mean, I write every day, except when I'm, promoting a book. I don't know. It's just my job. Like, I just get up and write. And I think the important thing, someone asked me at an event earlier today, how do you know when to stop researching and start writing? And I said, I know I have to stop or I'm not going to get the book done. Like, the deadline keeps me focused. So
Right.
If I've been researching for 3 months, as fun as that is, the ticking clock makes me put it down. And there's no time to be a perfectionist. You never know everything. And I also feel like you can't know what you need always until you've started writing the book, and then you can go back. So, I'm not a perfectionist type person, and I feel better when I keep things moving.
Right. So how long does it take you to do the writing part of it?
About 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a lot, there's always a false start. Like, I don't know if this happens with you, but like, you write a draft and you think it's great, and then you give it to someone to read, like your agent or editor, and they tell you that it's not great at all, and you're like, oh. So, and that happens every time.
Right.
Like, there's no way to sit down and write the book and get it right and be done.
Right.
And I mean, I've asked authors who have 20 plus books under their belt, and they say no, they can't do that either. So
Right.
I'm
It's like
giving
a
up that
jigsaw
idea.
puzzle. You have to have it out and done, or so that you can start putting it back together again.
Yes.
If there's nothing there to work with, then you can't create it.
Right.
So you get something down on the page and a first draft.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Stephen King said you should be able to have your first draft done in 3 months, but I mean, technically I can see why he says that if you just go by word count, but that's a bit fast. I can't do that.
Right. I can't even imagine doing that.
No.
I'm a slower writer. So what are you reading currently, or what have you read recently that you loved?
The last book I finished was The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz.
I just bought that yesterday.
Oh my God.
That next.
I liked it even more than I thought I would, and I was excited to read it. But the way she kind of goes inside baseball with book publishing and what it's like to be an author, successful or not successful, like she hits both ends of the spectrum. It was such fascinating reading, and there were these just twists in it, and it's like the perfect page turner. So that was a good one. And then I just bought a book called With Teeth. I forget the author's name, but I was told it's really good, and I'm bringing it with me. Yeah.
Nice. And before we open it up to questions, what are you working on next?
I have a book coming out next summer that's set in a jewelry dynasty, kind of like a Tiffany. And it's a family they're like synonymous with engagement rings and diamonds. And of course, none of the daughters of the family have had any luck in love. And in fact, one of the granddaughters has sort of been cast out, and she returns to the family to reclaim what's hers at the beginning of the summer. And it unfolds from there.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So that must have required some interesting research as well.
Yeah, well, this one was during last summer. I was writing it during, the height of everything. But fortunately, I was in Provincetown where the book is set. And there's this very vibrant, like estate jewelry scene out there.
Right.
So my research, like, it was different than I expected it to be. Like, I wasn't going to like the big stores on Fifth Avenue, but I learned a tremendous amount from people who sell antique jewelry, and that really made its way like into sort of like the soul of the book. So it worked out really well.
Oh, I feel like that would almost be more interesting than like the big stores on Fifth Avenue. You'll get sort of some secrets and some nitty gritty
Yeah.
from that. Did you end up buying any jewelry along the
Oh my
way?
gosh. Yeah. See, this is the thing. It's like research always leads you down dangerous roads. So yes, there's a jewelry store in New York City called Pippin, and the most beautiful estate things. And I did some shopping there. And there were a few places in Provincetown, but I had to I had to rein it in.
To reel it in.
Another a jeweler that really kind of gave me the idea for a big part of the book is a woman named, the company's called Lulu Frost. Her real name's Lisa. And her jewelry line was launched when they closed the Plaza Hotel and started selling off the fixtures. She took all of the letters and numbers off the doors and she cast them in molds and made necklaces out of them.
Oh, wow.
And it was called the Plaza Collection. So you could get your initials or your birth date, and there were these, they looked like the type of lettering you'd see, on a door. They're very distinctive. And I love that idea. And her whole line is taking antiques and repurposing them into charms. Like, I have an old subway token from like the 1960s on a necklace, or like I said, your initials. So the idea of jewelry as being personal versus just something you get from someone as a gift, buying it for yourself versus waiting to receive it, was something I played with in this story.
Oh, that's neat. I like that. Very cool. Well, I'm excited for that. And I love Lush so much. Such a good read. Everyone should buy it. So we should open it up to questions from viewers.
Well, I actually have a couple questions too. What I liked the most about this book, Jamie, is I felt that it was so personal. You know what I mean? I felt like I really got to know these people. And how many drafts do you normally do? Do you normally produce during the writing process?
Oh, gosh, I hate to think of them. I try to forget those drafts. Like 3 is, I'd say, is average. About 3. This book was pretty much, it went along the way I had envisioned it, but I knew I was missing a scene at the end to kind of bring it all together. I don't want to give anything away, but I really was missing that punctuation. And I said to my agent, I don't know what I'm missing here. Like, I'm too close to it. And he knew about all my research, and we looked through my notes, and he found something that I had written down and learned about at Bedell Cellars. And he was like, this is your scene. Why haven't you used this yet? And that was very late in the process. It was like a month before the book was due. So that was like as close to the edge as I've ever come with not being able to figure it out.
Where to end it?
Not where to end it, but like the scene that makes it all come together. That is like, there's this saying in this writing guide, like the promise of the premise. Like, I needed to bring it together in this one moment, and I didn't know how to do that for a long time.
That's so interesting when like you're so close to something that you can't see what you need. And then that's why editors and agents are so fabulous, because they can read it and it's like a new pair of eyes, and they can just see what you're missing.
How many drafts do you usually do, Nicola?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, because I don't feel like I save them as drafts. I like just keep working on them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't even know the answer to that. Maybe that means I'm doing it wrong.
There is no wrong. That's what I'm learning. There's no wrong.
So we have quite a few people watching on Facebook Live. So if you guys have any questions, just type them into the comments and I will read them out to Jamie. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I've got a ton of questions, so I can keep this going for a little while.
I have another question. So can you tell us about the cover? Because this is a departure for you from your other books covers.
Yes. I do. This is my favorite book cover I've ever had. So I have 5 books before this, and 4 of them are very like beach covery. They're beach books, and it's always a woman on the beach with a hat, and they were beautiful. But my new publisher, every art department has a different vision for how to package the story, and this was just a different group of people who have a different idea of like how they wanted to present the story. So even though it is set during the summer in a coastal town, they pared it down to something like just beautiful and simple, and they use color in a way that I'm in awe of. So I mean, I wish I could just put this cover in every book. Yeah.
So another one of my questions is, how was it working with the great Sally Kim?
I mean, she is a dream. She's the most wonderful person, amazing dynamo of an editor. And I've known her for years, and it was always like kind of a dream. Like that would be like my ultimate, to work with her. So I feel incredibly lucky. She is an absolute one of a kind. And I've been in book publishing a long time. I started working in book publishing in 1996, and I've met a lot of great, talented people, but Sally is, I mean, tops.
Well, she also has a certain eye. So I have this, I mean, Mike can probably attest to it. If I know it's a Sally Kim book, I will usually pick it up and read it.
Oh, that's so, I'm gonna tell her that.
Well, believe me, I've gushed
She
to
knows.
her many times. I'm a huge fan of her taste.
Yeah.
And I
You
think
got
that
it.
she pushes the envelope sometimes. And I love that. And I mean, the thing with your book is you incorporate so many other books within the book itself. I mean, I have to tell you, I wanted to reread Mistral's Daughter as soon as I put this book down, and I couldn't find it. So now I'm on a mission.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I remember, I think I was maybe 16 or 17 when I read it, and I stole it off my mom's night table.
Well, if you can't find it, I have multiple mass market paperbacks here. I'd be happy to drop one in the mail.
Well, I mean, it was so funny because I remember that book being so pivotal in kind of my reading life. I mean, it's my dirty little secret that I love a summer read.
But I think we need to make a pact that it will no longer be our dirty little secret, and we are going to proudly proclaim our love for the trashy summer read.
Well, I mean, anybody who works at the store knows that I am a big fan of the trashy summer read.
All right. Part of the sisterhood. I like it.
It's just, it was a book that I literally had to keep reading. And I mean,
oh my gosh, Nicola,
that's my favorite kind of book.
I know, now I have to go back and read it.
Every character, like that half sister Nadine, Kathleen, remember her?
Yeah.
Every character, Nicola, is like so like vivid and purposeful and indelible. Like I just like, this is the one book you have to, and you'll like it because there's a lot of historical in there. It's like it's sweeping and epic and goes back in time. It's like perfect.
This is so good for book clubs too. I mean, they're going to read your book and then they're going to reread these books.
Oh, I mean, I wanted to reread. I can tell you that I definitely wanted to reread some of those books that I visited, that kind of shaped, that teenage self that, you're trying to be cool and trying not to read, trying not to admit that you're a reader. to all your friends because it's not super cool when you're a teenager. And you know, it was so funny because every book that I would turn a page and she'd have another book and I go, oh my God, I read that. I love that book. And I mean, that was, to me, was like my perfect summer read.
Oh my goodness. That was like my dream, was that would be like the experience. And believe me, it was hard to keep it pared down to talking about just 3 or 4 of the books. You know, I had to like
I
keep
bet.
it. Yeah, I mean, there were others. I could have gone into a whole bunch of, I mean, there was the Thornbirds, and I mean,
I was going to say the
oh
Thornbird.
yeah. I mean, but I felt like I picked, I had to also choose not just books that I loved, but that books that would serve the purpose of this story in terms of what a new reader could extrapolate from it. Like I loved Mistral's Daughter, but it was less of a feminist takeaway than Scruples, which was just one woman's ascension to the top of her industry. You know, Mistral's Daughter was much more family love affairs and, you know, scandal choices. Yeah. So that played a part in why I wrote about some books in depth versus others.
So Nicola, what I have a question for you now. What inspired you to write Montauk, and how much time have you spent on Montauk?
Oh, so I used to have a weekend house in Montauk when I lived in New York City. And so I love Montauk so much. I've been going out there for about 10 years, and I saw it start to change from a very quaint little fishing village into more of like the popular place to be. And, you know, they've done a very good job of preserving a lot of the land there. And so it's still beautiful and I love it, but it was changed. I saw it changing over the years a little, and I wanted to, I just felt nostalgic for the way it used to be. And I started to imagine what it was like back in the day when people first started going out there. And so that's—
do you know where Dirt Flats is?
Dirt Flats? No.
It used to be a development right by the beach in Montauk. My aunt had a summer house that she used to go out.
Oh, okay.
And when we would come visit, we would go out to Montauk.
Okay. So did you go to Ditch Plains?
The Ditch Plains? Oh, yeah. Oh, maybe I got it because, you know, I'm thinking of my kid head. Maybe it was Ditch Plains. We always called it Dirt Flats.
Well, maybe that's what was next to Ditch Plains.
Because I know the Ditch Plains beach. We used to walk there all the time.
Yes.
And that wonderful old like seafood restaurant that's just a shack, and you sit on those horrible tables in front of it.
Durier's?
And you get mussels.
Oh,
sorry, we're going to
Gossman's, Durier's.
Yeah, I just remember going there as a kid. I mean, the last time I was there was probably the late 90s.
Okay.
So I've seen it change a lot.
Yes, you have as well, yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's, you know, it's magical.
Yeah, and a lot of so it takes place in the summer of 1938, and I incorporated a lot of places that are still there in Montauk. Like
I just ordered myself a copy. I have to tell you.
Well, you'll have to let me know.
I know this is what's really bad. See, I end up ordering people's books when we're on these chats, going, "Oh, I need to read that." And actually, I got one for my cousin to send to her.
Great. I love it.
And they will be getting copies of Blush too, Jamie.
All right.
I keep my family in books.
I love it.
So does anybody have any questions out there? We've got quite a few people watching on Facebook, and we've got people in the Zoom studio. Are we just so mesmerizing that nobody has any questions? Well, I can ask some more. One of the things that I thought that this was really different from your other books too. I mean, it has a different, do you think it was in the editorial, or do you think it was it what you were aiming for to be really different?
I think because of what I wanted to do with the book, it just had to be different. It had to, it incorporated more things. That my other books, they were family stories and even multi-generational family stories, but the element of being on the vineyard, which is such a rich setting, and incorporating these books, sometimes it was almost like two stories going at once. It just it gave me so much to work with that the book just became probably the most rich story I've been able to tell so far. And that's probably why it took me until my sixth book to write this, because I needed to have the confidence to tell the story and to know how to do it. So it did take me some time. If I tried to write this 6 years ago, I don't think I would have been able to.
Well, I can tell you, I'm so glad that you did write it. I mean, I really,
Thank you.
really enjoyed it. And it really brought back a lot of those books that kind of shaped me as a reader.
Well, I hope, new readers will discover these books. And the timing is really interesting, because there's a documentary coming out on CNN on Sunday about Jackie Collins called Lady Boss. And it really takes a hard look at what she accomplished as a blockbuster best-selling novelist, but also how the book was received in her day, in their time. And we are celebrating these books now and saying how brilliant and amazing they were, but she was really there's clips of her on talk shows being condescended to by the host, women in the audience attacking her. One woman stood up and said she threw the book out of her house. So I mean, she was not always getting the love that we're talking about tonight when we look back fondly on these books. So I do hope that a new generation can read these books and maybe enjoy them in a way that people weren't always able to in their day.
Well, does anybody have any questions? Nicola, do you have any other questions?
Well, I have a comment, but I just loved how you talked about the different relationships, like two different marriages at different stages. There's like Vivian's marriage, and then Leah's marriage, and then Sadie's like forbidden love. So I liked how you managed to get all three sort of different levels of love and relationships into one book.
Oh, I love that too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like, the thing with the marriage is you say, oh, I'm going to be with this person forever, but you're not the same person when you're 30 or 50 or 7. We're always changing. So the challenge is, is it luck to find someone who's willing to change with you? Is it work that you make yourselves change in a way that remains compatible? Like, it's fascinating to me, and I don't have the answer. So I do like to explore that in my characters in different stages of their love lives.
Yeah, I like that.
I loved it. And I love the fact that Sadie found love when she wasn't looking for it.
That's the best time for it to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, I loved that. I love that she kind of went back to her roots and found the person that was probably the most in touch with who her family really was.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Thank you.
Well, if nobody has any questions, Jamie, thank you so much. And really, this book, I'm so excited to sell it to my customers.
Thank you so much.
I can't wait to see them come back and tell me, oh yeah, I remember this. And Nicola, now I'm going to read your book.
Well, thank you.
And send it to my family.
And Nicola's next book's coming out in August.
And what's your next book, Nicola?
Oh, my next book is, I just happen to have one right here. It's called The Showgirl. And
I love the cover.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great cover.
I love the cover too. I'm really excited. This is an early copy, so it'll be hardback. So yeah, this takes place in the Roaring 20s, the 1920s. And it follows the story of a young woman who is determined to become one of the Ziegfeld Follies. And she has to, figured out how to get there.
It's such good timing, Nicola, because everyone's talking about the roaring 20s coming back. Like now we're having, like we're going to enter into another. So to be able to like go to the original post-pandemic, post whatever 20s.
I know,
Good
everyone's like
timing.
raring to go now, raring to travel and get out, stand and go out dancing and mingling. So yeah, it does. It's interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you
Well,
so
ladies,
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was just really such a joy to be a part of this. And Jamie, congratulations. Thank you for writing a book that we can all fall in love with every character, except for the horrible guy.
And
right.
Where can people who are watching buy the book?
They can go to our website, www.ggpbooks.com, and we have book plates from Jamie.
Yes.
And we have plenty of books. And Nicola, we would love to do something with you in the future. I mean, this was so much fun.
Sounds good.
Now I'm gonna have to get a copy of Showgirls.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Well, thank you both. Thanks so much for hosting me. Nicola, thanks for joining me tonight. And
it was so fun.
It was great talking to you about this. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Happy summer reading. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.